Three, two, one, go. There we are, Anthony. We're live. Another week here, you guys. Wednesday, July 10th, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. A lot going on in the news and media this week in relation to the miners, Anthony. It's been hard for us to keep up. Obviously, we had that major headline out from Bitfarms early in the week, but we've had a number of big reports, production reports, HPC announcements, new chip deals, all sorts of things in the media here, not to mention Bitcoin difficulty, Bitcoin price, and the selling activity we're seeing from Mt. Gox and actually the German government. So a lot going on. How are you feeling with everything this week, Anthony?
It's a busy week this week. Lots of data coming out, lots of volatility in the Bitcoin price and the mining stocks. Can't keep up with everything at the moment.
Yeah, you certainly are right there. I've tried to reload these graphs a number of times here in terms of the mid-morning outlook, but it keeps changing on us. Last I looked, the miners were actually turning fairly green there. Count was up a couple percent, but we'll get right into it. You guys feel free to leave your questions or comments in the chat. We've got a slide for all 16 miners this week, so we're going to go through each and every one of them. We'd love to answer your questions here with our resident Bitcoin mining expert, Anthony. Now, let's get into the presentation. First and foremost, Anthony, the price of Bitcoin itself. So at the time I took this, we were hovering just below 58,000. I highlighted the local top here, 59,338. It was hit at 5 a.m. this morning. It seems like we just can't get back above that 60,000 milestone, eh?
Yeah, this last week or so, we've sort of like hovered around this position now, this sort of 55 to 60. But again, it's, I mean, having been through the cycle in 2022, that, what's happening at the moment, I'm not really paying overly too much attention to it. Bitcoin will do what it does. We're still getting further and further away from the halving. So we're getting to that point in time now where in previous cycles, the Bitcoin price has started to rally. And, we'll hopefully reach out to freedom by 40 and see if we can get us a sort of a Bitcoin chart to plot what the future looks like in the short to medium term. But I'm not paying too much attention. There's again, it's a correlation with the Bitcoin miners. We're not seeing the same correlation. We've had some in the last month. We've had some great moves in the mining stocks, and we've had some mining stocks not do as well as others. So there seems to be a decoupling all over the place at the moment. The market does like this HPC narrative, and it's been rewarding some of the miners, especially the likes of Core Scientific, the likes of IREN, the likes of TeraWulf, the likes of HUT, the likes of Soluna. Not so much the pure play miners. So Bitfarms in the last month hasn't really grown in price. Neither has Riot, neither has Marathon Digital, and neither has CleanSpark. And so you can see that that narrative story that we've talked about many times on many podcasts now. This HPC is present today. We're not, who knows how long it's going to last. But if it does last, as people expect it to, then those miners that have, got into that space, as well as doing Bitcoin mining, let's be honest, they're not moving away from Bitcoin mining. They're just utilizing some of the power that they've got available to grow HPC business. And we've seen that impact there on some of those share prices quite considerably. This last week or so, we've seen the TeraWulf share price reach, close to $6. And bear in mind, you go back 18 months ago, that I bought TeraWulf when it was 52 cents. So, people who held on through the last 18 months are sitting on a really nice position in TeraWulf. And there's a number of other stocks, Core Scientific, as well as had a really good run. And we'll come on to more news about them shortly. But Bitcoin price, it's doing what it's doing there. You're right. You've articulated the sales from Mt. Gox, and obviously the Germans are also looking into selling. But they'll do what they want to do. If they've not worked out that they should be holding Bitcoin for a long time, then but they'll do what they want to do. Someone want to go in there and buy it. And I think there's been actually people going online and saying, please sell it to me. If you're selling it, I'll buy the whole lot. So it's quite interesting, the conversations that we're seeing on social media regarding these sales. But the ETFs are still buying Bitcoin. The adoption into Bitcoin seems to be rising as well. So and it's part of the political landscape in the US for the election. So they're using it as a political tool to get votes. So it'll be a bit interesting next 6 months.
Yeah, it definitely will. Now we have a slide about Nashville coming up next. It sounds like there may be a few of the presidential candidates attending that conference now, as this does become more of a political hotbed issue. So that'll be really interesting. The whole Germany narrative, I don't know a lot about that story, Anthony. Why did they buy it and why are they selling? Do you have any context there as to the motive?
None whatsoever. I mean, I can remember the UK government selling most of its gold a few years ago, and there was, people saying why you were doing that, and so governments do what governments do. Maybe they required, to raise funds to pay for, their day-to-day business, to reduce the amount of debt that each of these governments have to take on literally on a daily basis. We're talking billions and trillions of dollars for some economies. So maybe they were just using to reduce the pain for a couple of days. But it does seem an interesting decision they've made there, because, you look at the last sort of 10, 11 years and see where the Bitcoin price has gone. And yes, it is volatile, but if you look at the line, generally, it's going in one direction. So, and again, some analysts came out this week and, they've looked at the price for next year and they're saying, 200,000 by the end of 2025 and maybe 1 million by the end of 2033. So, why would you be selling it at 57, 58,000 if if people are forecasting it going significantly higher?
Yeah, I found that a little odd myself. It feels like that 10,000 Bitcoin pizza situation is starting all over again, right? Germany's going to look back at this one day and maybe not so happy. Now, moving along here, I just mentioned Nashville. We've got that coming up now just in a week, maybe 2 weeks' time, July 25th. This is going to be a really good one, Anthony. We are going to a number of different events from members of the community here. We're going to be hosting our own meetup. We're on speaker panels. You're obviously speaking at the main mining stage. I've actually secured myself as a moderator for a really interesting Bitcoin balance sheet discussion. And this should be a really fun event. So let us know in the comment section below, you guys, if you're going to make it out to Nashville. Again, Freedom by 40's there. I think Sebastian might be coming down. We're going to try and get everyone together and maybe go out for a couple cocktails. Anthony, what are you thinking about Nashville? You've been to a few of these events now, but this is the biggest, eh?
Yeah, and actually, only go back sort of like 12 months that was my, been to my first conference, and actually that was in Amsterdam. And so this is sort of like the biggest conference. This is the Bitcoin conference, this one in Nashville. So there'll be a lot more people here. Great to be asked to come as being part of a panel on the stage. And my actual panel discussion is about AI in the Bitcoin mining space. That's going to be quite interesting. I know at the moment we've got Aidan Killett from Hive Digital on the stage with me. We've got Sam Tabar on the stage with me. We're reaching out to Adam Sullivan, who's also hopefully can be available, because when you're looking at AI, and the biggest news story we've had this year in the mining space was obviously the CoreWeave contract with Core Scientific. That's just really blown the market wide open. And as Ben Gagnon, who was on the podcast this week, and his first day as CEO, and we're sort of like asking him questions of what he thought about AI, and he said it's the narrative now is we're looking at everyone's looking at the AI space, and it's a current position. We said that before. It's not like they're not thinking 15 years, but looking currently now. I suppose in the same way that certain miners looked at Ethereum mining when that became really popular in the 5 or 6 years ago, and the margins were really good. And then Ethereum mining, the fork happened, but we didn't know the fork was going to happen. It's just a case of when. I think it dragged for about 2 years longer than the actual initial date. So, but HPC and AI, I think it's starting to become more of day-to-day usage in most people's lives. The adoption to 100 million was literally a few months, and if you think the likes of Amazon and Facebook took years to get to that sort of adoption level, but AI really, it's the fastest tech that's been adopted of all the tech that is out there. Nothing's gone as quickly as this now. So you think it's got some longevity, and I've used some of the sort of like the software, and it's really useful.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems to be becoming a staple. I just see Aiden said a lot of these countries have actually confiscated their Bitcoin. I've heard that as well, especially with the US, but I did see something saying that the Germany situation. They had bought 50,000 Bitcoin around Christmas, and they were now selling those. But let me know, fact check me in the comment section there. But that's what I was under the impression of. And yeah, Nashville, I think, Anthony, should be really a breakout event for us. I see a few people in the chat, WP there, saying we'll see you down there. Make sure you guys email me your cell phone number or some info, and we'll make sure to let you know when and where we plan this meetup. Now, moving along here, Anthony, we've got a couple more slides before we break into the miner specific ones. We're over 53 concurrent now, so thanks so much, you guys. Feel free to comment, hit the like button, really get this one rocking. Get up to 100 viewers, hopefully, Anthony, before we're into the miner specific stuff. But mid-morning update, this was the slide that I said I've had to take over about 5 times. I'll pull up my phone right now and see how we're looking. But as of about 8:30 a.m., it was a mixed bag. Core Scientific leading the pack. We had Soluna on the tail end. But like I say, it's switched up quite a bit from here. How's your portfolio looking? How are you feeling about the moves today coming off yesterday's bloodbath?
Yeah, I mean, some of these days this week have been sort of like total reversals. So the day has started well, and all of a sudden it just turns, and there's no real reason sometimes for that. You've got to, if you're in this space with the miners, you've got to be acknowledge the fact that you're going to have volatility in the prices there. Today's is a little bit greener. There's only a handful of stocks that are in the red at the moment. So Soluna is down just over 4%. DMG, Bitdeer down less, about 1%, and then Bit Digital, Bitfarms, and CleanSpark just a fraction of a percent down there. But the rest of them are in the green, and they're being led at the moment by DigiHost and IREN and Core Scientific. So lots of volatility in the miners, but if you look at the sort of like the last month in terms of how these stocks have done, there are a couple of ones that can highlight. The best performing stock over the last month actually is Soluna Holdings, followed by the likes of Core Scientific and the likes of TeraWulf as well, has had a really good month, and Hut's had a great month. Those seem to be the standout ones. If you think about, we already discussed the fact that they're all looking at HPC to match up to their Bitcoin mining as having a separate revenue stream coming through there, utilizing that extra power and facilities that they've got available. You can see why the markets are starting to look at this, and we saw firsthand from our trip to Denton how the analysts in these big Wall Street companies looked at this, and they were saying at the moment HPC is the dominating discussion in terms of how these miners are being valued. That's where the value is coming from, because we said before with Bitcoin mining, there's a little bit of uncertainty as to what's happening. We're all hoping the Bitcoin price will go up, but no one can actually say whether it will or not. And so there's always uncertainty. There's more certainty in HPC because these companies are signing contracts to deliver a set amount of revenues and provide a set amount of service. So they're going to provide power and provide facilities and a managed service for those facilities, and they get rewarded handsomely. And also these users of these facilities, so the likes of CoreWeave, can then obviously sell their services, and they do quite well out of that way. So there's people that have done some analysis on the sort of the revenues that CoreWeave are going to bring in. So even though Core Scientific are going to do really well, CoreWeave will do exceptionally well out of this because there is a demand for them types of services out there.
Yeah, funny enough, our number one Core Scientific fan just showed up, Anthony, as you're talking about the CoreWeave deal. Gary, good morning. How you doing, buddy? Jane Smith is also here. Totally right, Jane, about this rotation or almost yin and yang coin flip side of the debate here versus mining HPC on a daily basis. And then Woodstock, a longtime member of the channel, running late, but here now. So good to see everybody this morning. We're gearing up to get into the miner analysis. We just wanted to run through a couple more slides. Hash price, Anthony, I've highlighted. So this is a 1 month view. You can see pretty strong downtrend. Looks like we may have found some bottom in the 44.50 area. We're bouncing now up into the $47, $48 range. We're getting pretty thin here, but it looks like the bottom may be in, hey?
Yeah, it certainly. I mean, actually, if you looked at the 7-day one, it went down to like 43 for a couple of days. That's getting quite close to sort of break even for a lot of these miners out there. If you think about what we've seen in terms of energy cost, in fact, I think SATO's cost to mine Bitcoin was probably around about that amount there. I think they put it in Canadian dollars, but it was quite high at the moment. Now we've gone through the halving, and the energy cost has doubled for most of these, well, double for all these miners. You've got to now think about bringing in more efficient miner machines to reduce the cost of mining, because you want more efficiency. The chances are now they're all paying the energy price that they've been paying. They're all in these facilities with probably energy contracts, and so they're paying them prices there. And but yeah, it's that sort of level there is probably getting close to break even for a lot of these, and we'll find out in about 3 weeks' time when the Q2 numbers start coming out, which will include an element of pre and post halving. So those numbers will be from April, May, and June, and the halving occurred on the 19th/20th of April, depending on what part of the world you were actually residing in.
Yeah.
So we'll see a lot of these miners. In fact, I predict now that all the miners will be sort of red for it in terms of net income. They'll have losses for Q2 because the Bitcoin price is down here. And actually, now you're right. As that graph starts moving upwards, there, it looks like that there is a bottoming there, because a lot of these non-public miners or small miners who haven't got the ability to arrange really cheap energy deals are just having to switch off because it's just not profitable for them. And the Bitcoin price hasn't been helping them. The Bitcoin price has dropped about 25% since its high when it reached 74,000 back in March, and everything was looking quite rosy then.
Sure. So
that's where we are at the moment. So we're seeing that. It looks like we're seeing a bottoming of the hash price there. Getting to 48 gives a little bit of relief to the those efficient miners who are able then to keep mining and benefit from the difficulty. So we've seen the difficulty come down in the last difficulty a few days ago. It dropped by about just over 4%. So what that means is it was proving to be too hard for the number of machines on the network to find the magic number. And therefore, the difficulty, as we can see in the chart there, the difficulty dropped already in July by that 4%. And you can sort of see how the Bitcoin price, which is the graph, is tracking the difficulty, which is the straight line chart.
Now, interestingly enough, just to jump in, Anthony, you guys can see how the hash price graph, the Bitcoin difficulty, and then obviously the Bitcoin price are all intermingled. But Anthony, I saw this same article that you actually sent me on the right here from July 9th, suggesting that this drop in difficulty may indicate the bottom is in, or at least the local bottom is in for Bitcoin price, which in turn would mean for hash price as well. That's got to be a welcome sign for the miners, eh?
It's got to be, yeah. It's got to be welcome, because some of them will be struggling. You've got a few miners, the likes of CleanSpark, IREN, Marathon, operating, and Core Scientific actually now is probably got at the moment the second most efficient fleet out there behind CleanSpark. So CleanSpark are now in the 22s in terms of joules per terahash. That's getting lower, and that will constantly get lower for them because they're bringing in a lot more S21s between now and the end of the year. So that'll bring their average fleet efficiency down there. But all these the miners that are bringing in these big hash rates are all bringing in sort of like really efficient mining machines. So most of them will be getting down to sort of 20 or 21 joules per terahash by the end of the year. And that's where you need to be. That becomes, beneficial to you in terms of it costs less to mine a Bitcoin, and energy is that big cost. It's the biggest cost by far.
Yeah.
And every 4 years it doubles.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the name of the game here. Now, moving along, you guys, a quick review of what we've done this week. So going back to Thursday of last week, we talked about the Bitcoin flash crash of last week. Friday was obviously a tough day, a really tough day yesterday for the mining sector as well. Then we had all our production reports come out. We had the new CEO announcement from Bitfarms. So a lot of people, I think, in the comments and channel here anticipated Ben could be a candidate there, but really awesome to see that come to fruition. And then yesterday, a number of big news releases and additional production results. So make sure you guys go check that out. It was an action-packed week on the channel. In addition to that, Anthony, our audio podcast, we talked about this a little bit last week. This one caught us by surprise. I didn't think there was a huge appetite for this, but we've had just about 3,300 downloads as of this morning. Those are the top countries and cities. So US, United Kingdom, Germany, actually. The people selling the Bitcoin right now are top 3 in terms of countries. And cities, you guys, we have Sydney, New York, Munich, Dallas, a number of the big global cities here tuning in, which is great to see. Vancouver, Miami. So let us know in the comment section below where you're tuning in from, your country, your city. We'd love to know. And if for whatever reason you can't check out the YouTube videos, make sure you check into the podcast if you're driving or at the gym or whatever the case is. Seems to be quite the appetite. We'll continue to upload those on a daily basis. And then, Anthony, getting into the news here. So Bitfarms was obviously the first big announcement of the week with the appointment of Ben as CEO. So we can talk about this one a little bit. I want to get into Hive next, you guys. So if you have any questions on Hive, leave those in the comments as well. But Anthony, tell us your thoughts on Bitfarms.
I mean, you know, we've discussed about the obviously the impact that the Riot Platforms negotiations with them over the past sort of 16 months. They've been discussing potential merger or acquisition of Bitfarms. We saw the previous CEO Jeff Morphy, who I've met a few times at various conferences. Did a real great job with the company, getting rid of all that debt, getting the hash rate to 5 or 6 exahash. And then being told, his services weren't required anymore. And then while they were looking for another CEO, he was told to sort of manage the role until the successor had been appointed. And then he got released, quite very quickly in April. And so they've been sort of one of the directors has stepped in as acting, the chairman as acting CEO for the last couple of months. So those discussions have been going on about to replace. And Ben's been with the company 5 years. Ben's one of the most respected officers in the Bitcoin mining space. So he was a chief mining officer for the last 5 years, and now he's he's now the CEO of the company. And so it's under his tenure. I think he'll do a great job there. As I say, he's well liked. He's been in the he's obviously a Bitcoin mining enthusiast. I mean, he was mining very early in the Bitcoin life cycle. So there's not much that Ben doesn't know. He knows, obviously, he's been at the forefront from a strategy perspective in making sure that Bitfarm are utilizing as much cheap renewable energy as possible. And they've gone into the likes of Paraguay, Argentina, in the US now. And obviously they're a Canadian-based company originally. So he's been sort of very pivotal to that strategy. And now he's the CEO, and from having him on the podcast the same day he was announced was a real coup for the channel. Nobody else managed to get an interview with Ben before we did, so that's really great. And hopefully that video went out and we got some good feedback from the from subscribers and people who are on this channel now saying, it was great to hear him in the space. I said about a month ago that I didn't expect Ben to get the role because I thought they'd be looking for someone with that sort of CEO background, so like a big name. But actually, if you take a step back, Ben is Bitfarms, and they want to keep hold of their prized possession. He is well sought after. I mean, if he said he was looking for another role, you'd get probably 12 or 13 mining companies asking for his CV because he's that well respected. And so now he's the CEO, and he's going to be leading the team going forward. And we questioned him. We talked about the HPC angle, and we talked about growth rate, and we talked about energization. And he gave us his answers there. That they're going to get the hash rate target of 21 achieved by the end of the year. They want to get, and that 21 by the end of the year will be energized 21 by the end of the year. It won't be just a number that they've just installed and they're only operating at 16.
I've saved that clip, Anthony. I made that one a short for us so we can follow up with Ben on that promise at the end of the year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I just wanted to throw in the reason I chose this to put on the screen, Anthony, is just to talk about Ben's background a little bit, because you're right. He doesn't have that traditional finance or law background, but he's actually founded and operated 2 prior companies to joining Bitfarms, both in the Bitcoin mining space, and obviously has a lot of education and practical experience. So I agree with you, maybe not the traditional candidate, but I do think this one may be an Adam Sullivan, it's your time to shine type of situation.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do a great job. And actually, it's not just the CEO of these companies. You've got to have a great team around you. I mean, we've talked about another person in the space that's very well respected is Adam Sullivan. But when we went to Denton, we saw Adam and we saw the team supporting Adam there. So he's got a great team, at Core Scientific. They've had a challenging year in Chapter 11, but they used that year to come up with a plan, and the plan is coming through to fruition now. So we'll see Ben now take the reins now at Bitfarms, get to know all the key people in the organization, because previously as chief mining officer he wouldn't have had involvement in every department. Now he's a CEO, he needs to know everybody, what they're doing, and sort of like place his his strategy in their in tray so that they can sort of like support him where he wants to get to. So he's got some challenges ahead. I mean, Riot aren't going away at the moment. They own nearly 15% of the shares. They're going to carry on with their plan to address the shareholders, because at the end of the day, if a decision is ever made about Bitfarms, it will be down to the shareholders. Nobody in that company holds enough shares to stop that. It needs to be the retail institutional investors joining together and voting together on the decision. So I'm sure that Riot will continue their program, and we've seen them already this week. Since that announcement of Ben, they've now put a website together to highlight why they want to take over Bitfarms and what they felt, not with the company, not the actual the business that they've got there, but the actual directors who are running the company. And they had an issue with a number of those directors, and they're looking to bring in some independent directors to give it a fresh impetus. So that will carry on from Riot's perspective, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's down to shareholders at the end of the day. So for transparency, I own shares in both companies, so it'll be interesting to see how that one works out. But both need to sort of like, they've got the hash rate now, they need to start producing the Bitcoin associated with what they're saying the hash rate is, and we'll hopefully see that energization for both those companies rise in July.
Yeah, I own shares in both companies as well. We've got some snapshots from betterbitfarms.com on the Riot slide, actually, so we can talk to that. Interesting to hear your comments, Anthony, about there's a lot more to a company than a CEO and the team around them there. I wonder if Power Mining's the same situation, would you say?
No, it's different. It's just me and that. No, that's it. So
okay. Gotcha. No, just wanted to clarify that one.
Of course it's not. It's me and Chris.
Chris is Anthony's executive assistant and actually a huge contributor to the company, but he's a big member of the team. Now, Jane Smith put in a good comment here. In our interview with Ben, we asked about some of the HPC conversion timelines and times to energization. He said you're about 2 years out in North America, but in South America, that timeline's actually a little bit quicker due to differences in regulatory and maybe some permitting and things like that. So I thought that was very interesting as well, Anthony. This is one of the only companies that really has a strong presence outside of North America, at least in South America there. So that may be a factor to watch, in the near future.
Well, they're putting all the eggs in sort of Paraguay at the moment. If you think about the end of the year, when they achieve 21 exahash, 8 of that will be in Paraguay. So that's a significant amount of their. I think there's only maybe one or slightly more than 1 exahash at the moment. So a lot of the future growth between now and the end of the year is going to happen in Paraguay. So it's they'll be building the site down there to deliver that that once it to get to 8 there, and maybe there's opportunities to expand from that in future years. But yeah, that's a big. And we asked that question about the political landscape in South America. Is that an issue? Because I know when they first announced, I can go back, well over a year ago, when they started to look at South America, and people say, no, that's going to be a challenge. There's the political unrest down there. It can change in a day. Why would you want it to do that? And it's worked for Bitfarms. They've done everything right. They've got the right licenses to work there. There's been a lot of issues with non-regulated miners have come under the scrutiny of the government down there. So I think they're doing everything right at the moment, and they're spreading their sort of like their company across the North and South America, and I don't think they're afraid to go further afield either. I got the impression that if they could find the sites, they'll look to do to go and operate in other other jurisdictions. We've seen miners now moving into Africa. The likes of Marathon Digital are setting up there. We've got miners already operating in Iceland, in Sweden. We've got the likes of Bitdeer going to be operating in Norway, in Bhutan. So Bitcoin mining is a global business, but it's finding that cheap renewable energy and where the next location to find that energy will be. So these miners are constantly looking and trying to source. A year ago, I was in Dubai, and they were talking about big opportunities in South America then, and you're seeing miners going in there. Bitfarms have gone into there, and now it's Africa is where the conversations move to. So where the next location is going to be, we'll see opportunities there. And the great thing about miners is they can sort of they balance the sort of like the power, the grid. And if you've got access to like hydropower, and you've got like 1 gigawatt, but your actual local town or village only needs 100 megawatts. What do you do with the other 900 megawatts? It's not great to keep a lot of power if you're not utilizing it. Well, Bitcoin miners can go in and say, well, we'll take the 900 megawatts and we'll pay you for it, and you can put that money back into the village or the town, and it gives the community a payback for something that they thought they'd never be able to utilize. And so that's what the miners are really good at. They're really good at balancing the load, and the good citizens. So when the power is required, they'll switch off the machines. And this sort of industry, unlike any other industry, can switch off in seconds. You ask, go and ask Elon Musk if he can turn his car manufacturing business off in Texas in 30 seconds. He'll tell you to come back in a month or something like that. It just doesn't happen. These big battery plants, not a chance. But miners, we've spoke to a number of CEOs, and within a minute they can shut down facilities with 5, 6, 7 exahash.
I think they said within 4 minutes. Yeah. And we're getting a couple questions actually about Hive now, Anthony. So we can move along there. Interestingly enough, though, talking about megawatts, I've done a bit of research. I've seen anywhere from 1 megawatt powering 2 to 600 to 1,000 homes a year. So I just wanted to put that in perspective. The other thing I did a little bit of due diligence on, Anthony, was I looked at my power bill.
Aren't Marathon using 2 megawatts to power 11,000 homes in Finland? They're operating something like that. I think I saw a recent update with Marathon. I think using 2 megawatts, and it's powering 11,000 homes. So
all right, well, maybe let me know. It says I googled here, and it says ERCOT estimates 1 megawatt powers roughly 200 homes. But I guess depends maybe on the use or air conditioning or what. Regardless, I also took a look at my power bill, Anthony, and I'm paying 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour. What did you say it was in Great Britain?
I think we'll be paying closer to 30 cents in the UK.
Really?
It's over 20 pence. If you convert that into US dollars, it's going to be closer to 30 cents. So, but like again, I mean, if you came over here and started having to pay, I think it's something like about $10-11 for a gallon, you'd start crying, because that's what people are paying over here.
Jeez, eh? Okay, well, yeah, it puts the power rates of some of these top miners, Cypher specifically, really in the crosshairs there when you start talking about our power rates domestically or residentially here. Now I wanted to move along. Yeah, I wanted to move along to Hive. So this is one that we were supposed to have them on the channel Monday, actually, for an interview, and they pushed that one back on us, Anthony. So not sure of the reason for the pushback, but we're excited to get Frank and Aiden on the channel here within the next week or so.
Yeah.
This is one that's had a number of big releases since we've talked about them or interviewed them specifically on the channel. They had their earnings come out. They had, obviously, their June production results come out. Hive's a super interesting one. How are you feeling about this company currently?
I wrote about Hive literally about 6 weeks ago, and the title for my article was, "Is Hive Digital the most undervalued Bitcoin miner?" And the article then looks at the comparisons then of Hive Digital compared to the likes of Bitfarms, CleanSpark, Cypher, Riot, Marathon in terms of valuation, and it's startling the difference in valuation for these companies. I mean, yesterday I noticed Hive had dropped to, I think it was under 300 million in terms of market capitalization. I'll just quickly check now. Actually, market cap is 391 million market capitalization. It's got 5 exahash in terms of hash rate, and it's got a HPC business. Very little debt on the balance sheet. It's got a really good hodl. So if you look at the hodl and put that into dollars, they're over in fact at the moment they're over 2,500 Bitcoin in their hodl. And that equates to 156 million. So if you look at an enterprise value for this company and say that if the market cap's under 400 million and take away the 156, you've got an enterprise value then for the company of about 240 million. And then you look at how much hash rate they've got, which is 5, and divide the 240 million by 5, you get less than 50 million per exahash. Well, then you start comparing that to the other miners, and it's just significant. We've got IREN at the moment over $200 an exahash. You've got HUT 163. If we do it by exahash, it's over 200 million for IREN, 163 million for HUT, 151 million for Marathon. 126 million for Riot, TeraWulf at 217 million, Cypher 162, CleanSpark 145, and then you get to Hive and it's under 50 million. So there's a disconnect there in terms of where their valuation sits. So So
I'll stop you there for a sec, Anthony. 2 quick questions from the subscribers here. Number one, talking about Hive's relative value, asking if it may be a potential target for Marathon or an M&A. What are your thoughts there?
Could be a target for anyone. I think when we had these discussions about 2 months ago about Bitfarms being a target, and I said at the time, if you look at how much it costs to build a facility and how much it costs to put miners in that facility per exahash, you're looking at about 25 million to build and put miners in. So if you want to grow 7 exahash, which is what the Bitfarms hash rate was at the time, it was going to cost about 175 million. I said, look, add another 50 million on for incidental, so things that come up that you don't realize. Yeah. That takes it to 225. 225 divided by 7 is just over 30 million an exahash. Now, the floor in what I've just said there, that's what it costs. That's what we've got so many examples. Look at CleanSpark, what they've been buying their sites at. Yeah. They're buying the sites at 8 to 9 million an exahash. They're paying 16 million per exahash for the S21s, the most efficient miners on the market. 16 plus 9, 25. They're the numbers there, and out of 50 million, so the numbers stack up. But what doesn't stack up is the availability of these sites. You really got to go and find them. You just can't go and find a 200 megawatt site and say it's ready for mining tomorrow. even the sites that CleanSpark have just bought now, they're having to work round the clock to get them prepared and utilised this year. And they were fortunate to get some sites that were close to to being ready. Still got to do work to convert them, but we had Ben and we've had Jason and a few of the other CEOs. If you're looking at a site and need the power connection, you could be looking at 18 months to deliver that. And so the reason that Riot started having conversations with Bitfarms back in March last year, even though we as the general public and most people only found out in April this year, is because they realized there was going to be a challenge getting facilities. And by acquiring a company that's well run and has got a foothold in so many jurisdictions that Riot haven't got a foothold, and it was giving them, you could see all the synergies of buying that company. Hive will be in the same bracket. I mean, I'm sure when we speak to Aidan and Frank, I bet their phone's been going red as well. So when the question here says, is it potential for Marathon? It's a potential for any of those big sort of like top 4 or 5 companies.
And Anthony, the next 2 questions, kind of an extension of that, you may be reading them. How undervalued is Hive versus Bitfarms? And which do you think at this point in time is more attractive? And it sounds like based on the move in Bitfarms recently, Hive is actually at a better valuation, at least, eh?
Right. So this is a tricky one now, because Bitfarms has pulled back a little bit in terms of share price over the last week or so. So it's now hovering. I think last time I looked, it was hovering around $2.50. That market cap, I think, takes it under $1 billion now. What you've got to remember is where Bitfarms is now and where it's going to be by the end of the year. And they're online to grow to 21 exahash. So how much of the 21 exahash is built into their market capitalization? So looking at that there on that chart there, I think you've got it there at just over $1 billion on that chart there. So if you were to look at 21 exahash, because they're on track, they're at nearly at 12 at the moment. We'll probably get an update in July to say they've achieved the 12. Hive have got 5 at the moment. What we don't know is how much more hash rate they're going to grow between now and the end of the year. Last December they came out with a plan that they were going to get to 8 by the end of 2024. So is that still their plan? We'll ask Aidan and Frank when we speak to them on the podcast. What Hive have got that Bitfarms haven't got is Hive have got a HPC business already that's already bringing in revenues, and the revenues it's bringing in already is around about an annualized rate of about 10 million a year, or just under $1 million a month. Now they are hoping to ramp that up to $20 million a year by the end of 2024. So again, we'll ask Frank and Aidan on that podcast, how close are you to achieving that $20 million run rate? Bear in mind, we've got Bit Digital, who've got a customer whose their run rate in August goes up to $92 million a year. So there's a real big difference there. If you look at IREN, I think their run rate for their HPC business is very similar to what Hive is at the moment, around about $1 million a month at the moment. So those 2 companies are probably doing the same type of service at the moment, probably doing an on-demand service, so an as-required service. So people will go in and buy capacity off those GPUs to deliver maybe some educational type requirements. Because with Bitcoin miners and the power, if you haven't got the sort of like the utilization, if your power is not literally up for 99.999%, you're offering sort of like a secondary service then, and that would fit more into sort of like an educational type requirement. Yeah. Whereas if people need information like instantly, constantly, all the time, you've got to have the power to deliver that. And that's why we hear this 5 nines. The 5 nines is 99.99% uptime. So CoreWeave, who are taking over 270 megawatts of Core Scientific's power, they will take the risk with the power provider. And there will be probably, times when they'll have to curtail, but they're actually building that into their price structure as well. So what they can sell that business for, what they're paying Core Scientific, probably takes account that they're not going to get the full 5 nines. It might be close. It might be probably in the 90s. We're not saying they're going to get like half the power. We're talking about, maybe a few percent lower than expected, but that will reflect in the pricing of the packages that are on offer there. So that's how it works. But Hive, without sort of like confidence of knowing where their hash rate's going, it's a tricky one with Bitfarms. Bitfarms will have a premium in their price now because they've got they've paid most of the money to get to 21 exahash. They will get there. So then you're looking at a company that's at 21 exahash versus a company that's going to be 5.5, 6, getting towards 8. Are they going to get to 8? And a HPC business on top of that. Well, Bitfarms said they're going to HPC as well. So I think if you said compared to some of the other miners, I would say Hive is definitely undervalued compared to Marathon, compared to Riot, compared to Cypher, compared to TeraWulf, compared to IREN. But Bitfarms, because of that low market cap at the moment, when you consider they've got 11.4 machines installed of exahash, that's more than IREN, that's more than TeraWulf, that's more than Cypher, that's more than all those, Hut, all those companies, and they've all got a higher market cap than Bitfarms at the moment. So why is their share being suppressed a little bit at the moment? So that's a difficult one to answer. Without doing a lot more research. And it's again what would people pay for the hash rate? Riot literally offered about 100 million per exahash for Bitfarms. That's what they've looked at there. It's the floor of the value of the exahash is about 100 million per exahash. So if you use that for valuing Hive's got 5. Let's say that could be 500 million. Their market cap isn't 500 million. Their market cap's less than 500 million at the moment. And they've got a HPC business.
Sure. Now, you talk about HPC throughout the conversation here. We can't talk about HPC without talking about Bit Digital. Interestingly enough, Anthony, we also just got a question about BTBT or Bit Digital and Sam Tabar. So we'll throw that up on the screen. This one just came out with production for June, but more importantly, and I guess more recently, just announced a big acceptance into the Dell partnership program. So this is a big bullish catalyst for Bit Digital. Obviously, another stripe on their uniform here in terms of the HPC quest. Anthony, how do you feel about Bit Digital? I know we've talked to Sam extensively on the channel, and seems that he's found the winning solution right now, eh?
Yeah, just give me 30 seconds just to sort of add something to the last comment there that I've forgotten.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Is also the fact that if you look at Hive and Bitfarms, they are the top 2 performing miners in the Bitcoin industry at the moment. They have been for the last 3 years. So, when you look at the results coming out this month here, Hive will top the tables this month in literally all the metrics. So they do, they're not the biggest miner, but they do things really well. And they consistently do things well over the last 3-4 years. 2021, 2022, they were the top miner by a long way. In 2023, they're only second to Bitfarms. And this year, they're probably about second to Bitfarms as well. So those 2 companies tend to be, a little bit ahead of everybody else. The gap is closing this year, 2024. We're seeing far more miners producing what they should be producing. And those that aren't, it's really standing out as to there's a problem there. But the top sort of like 7, 8, 9 miners are very, very close together. But I just wanted to reiterate from Hive's perspective, production-wise, they do things really well. They don't pay out massive amounts of salaries or bonus and things like that, so they keep the G&A costs down there. So it's a well-run company. I think what shareholders sort of like scratching their heads at is where's the growth coming from? How are they going to pay for the growth? We've seen all these other companies. Hive were bigger market cap than all these companies we've talked about a year ago. So the TeraWulfs, the Bitfarms, the IRENs were all smaller than Hive a year ago, and they've all gone on to be billion-dollar-plus companies. Some of them into $2 billion now. And shareholders were saying, what's happening to Hive in terms of their growth and their expectancy? And we'll probably those sort of questions we'll be asking Frank and Aidan on the podcast. So we'll get a more insight as to why they believe they're being left behind a little bit. So Bit Digital. One of the biggest news stories of the year was the announcement of their, the fact they had a client, and the contract for HPC went from 35 million to 50 million. It's going to go to 92 million in August. And the company believe they'll get to their 100 million per annum target for HPC by the end of 2024. They're well on track to it. They're 92% there, so they've got a small fraction to go to get to that 100 million. They are doing this at the moment. So, Core Scientific have signed a deal, but the revenues won't come in until next year. And so, or maybe towards the end of this year, but, likely to come in next year, and the additional revenues for the extension to 270 come in maybe towards the end of next year. Digital getting it now, their money now, and they put their when you see their updates, they're adding this 4.1 million to their updates. In fact, it's in the actual first paragraph. The company earned an estimated 4.1 revenue from the HPC contract. So they're flying the flag for HPC there. In terms of Bitcoin mining, they're operating at 2.5 exahash at the moment. It's come down a little bit. It was about 2.8 a few months ago. So again, we'll find out from Sam. Is that down to where they have to curtail their machines for when the weather's maybe a little bit warmer, and they have to switch off the power to let the domestic supply utilize the power. The other big thing that what we saw in the month of in June for Bit Digital is they actually converted a lot of their Bitcoin holdings into Ethereum. So they swapped something like about 500 Bitcoin and brought in about 10,000, nearly 10,000 Ethereum in the month there. So it's not a case that they were selling Bitcoin; they're actually converting it into Ethereum. And we've had Sam on the podcast. He likes his staking money. He wants to earn revenues from staking money. And I think they're getting like 3.5%. So probably not getting anything from the BT side. And bear in mind, if these Ethereum ETFs get approved, which apparently we're looking like, if we look at the process for the Bitcoin ETFs being approved, we look like we're going down a similar route now with the Ethereum ETFs. If they get approved, what's going to happen to the Ethereum price? Bitcoin price was 42,000 at the beginning of January. It's now, even though it's come off, it's still at 58,000 today. So it's still a significant amount up from earlier in the year. What will happen to Ethereum? Is that going to rally once the ETFs are approved? Is Sam sort of like thinking, actually, I can get a bit of increase in the value of Ethereum, plus I'm going to, constantly increase the rewards I'm going to get by staking my Ethereum?
Well, and Anthony, two quick points there, you guys. The bottom sentence, you can see they earned an aggregate stake reward of 50 ETH during the month of June. So based on today's price of 31.20, that's almost $156,000 US per month, rather than just having your money sit there doing nothing. The other thing he mentioned, Anthony, is these Ethereum ETFs by design are not able to have their Ethereum staked. So if people like investors are looking for exposure to Ethereum, why would you choose an ETF where your money is just sitting there dead, as opposed to investing in Bit Digital where that money is actively compounding? Very interesting point as he tries to really draw that analogy of we want to be the micro strategy of Ethereum.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything they do at the moment as well. I mean, they're using a different model to other miners in terms of their HPC. So they've leased their machines, they've leased the facilities. So at the end of the day, it's a better model for them because they can look at the margin that they're receiving from that business. And when we looked at the Q1 margins, and bear in mind, this is after the company paid back to their client about $1 million for not reaching one of the targets, which is unlikely to happen again. So, we spoke to Sam and say, is that something that's going to happen, regularly? He went, no. That was just sort of like in the first couple of weeks of the actual service. We didn't hit one of the targets, and so therefore they paid back just over $1 million. They still achieved 61% margin on that business. 61%. This is really good, and in a time where there's no guarantees what the Bitcoin price is going to be, this company are delivering great revenues, great margins for another service, complementary service, and the profits from the HPC can be fed into Bitcoin mining and grow the Bitcoin mining service there. So Bit Digital, a company with absolutely zero debt on their balance sheet. And again, similar to Hive in terms of the fact that they're both valued at about, I think Bit Digital again, about 400 million. They've got probably close to 200 million In fact, they have 200 million on the balance sheet in terms of treasury. So again, you've got a company that's valued at 200 million. It delivers nearly 100 million a year in AI, and it's delivering 2.5, nearly 3 exahash in terms of Bitcoin mining. So certainly I full transparency, I've got some shares in Bit Digital. I had them for quite a while actually. But it's one of those companies you want to do a little bit more due diligence on there before you make any decisions. We're not here to tell you what shares to buy. We'll tell you occasionally we'll tell you what we own. But I quite like the setup at Bit Digital there, and they are getting, the share price has had a little bit of a pull upwards this year. But I still think that the market's not valuing this one correctly because they've got such a big HPC business. It hasn't seemed to fly like the likes of Core Scientific, like the likes of Hut and TeraWulf. Their share price has seen some tremendous upside in the last month or so. So let's see what the next few updates from Bit Digital. But this was an impressive June update.
Yeah, it certainly was. And just in relation to their pipeline, the first time I've ever heard a CEO call it pregnant pipeline. So that was an interesting comment from Sam as well. Always a character to talk to, and you get some great insights into the market dynamic. This is one that I hold as well, Anthony. I've been adding to recently, and I really personally like the Ethereum exposure myself. So next up, you guys, we have DMG Blockchain. They just came out with their production results for the month of June. Interestingly enough, though, Anthony, they also now have their new fleet, or 4,550 of the latest generation T21 miners en route, expected to be energized in month. So this is going to take DMG's hash rate from below 1 to about 1.7, which is monumental for this size of a company. Let's talk about DMG next.
Yeah. Sheldon's one of the longest, operators in the Bitcoin mining business. He's built DMG up from the bottom. He's worked with other mining companies to deliver facilities. He's one of his projects he worked on was the Rockdale facility for Bitdeer, and that's a 500 plus megawatt facility down there. But he created the Mara pool. He created the Terra pool, so he understands this industry better than most people. Yes, they've not really grown massively in the last year or so, but this announcement here, we've seen the announcement coming for a few months now. The purchase of these 4,500 T21 miners. So we know from speaking with Ben Gagnon how efficient these machines are. They really do deliver great. Returns for companies. Bitfarms were finding they were achieving something like 30% more than what the box was saying they could achieve. So this will take their hash rate to 1.7. So that's a 70% increase from where it is at the moment. And they've still got another 6 months of the year to try and get to the 2 exahash target. So this is good news for DMG, because we've said for a while now, how are these smaller miners able to grow hash rate? The one thing that sets DMG apart from the majority of those small miners is they've got quite a significant Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So it's in terms of valuation, that's 464 Bitcoin comes out at about 29 million. In terms of the value of Bitcoin there. So that's a sizable amount to have available should the opportunity arise. And this company hasn't, on the last report for quarter one in sort of at the end of March, they had very little debt on the balance sheet. So quite well run. Small team there, but do everything well. That they're operationally wise. They're in the sort of the top 5 or 6 in terms of miners. So this will be interesting to see when we get these. We really want to see these machines go in there and get that hash rate doubled. And again, valuation, they're under, I think last time I looked, it was like $60 million, and they've got 1 exahash. They're going to go to 1.7 exahash. What valuation? And bear in mind, $60 million, take away the Bitcoin hodl, you're down to probably $40 million. and you've got 1.7 exahash. That makes DMG look far more valuable to buy than the likes of Hive and Bitfarms. So but there is, people are paying a premium for size and growth and everything else. It's not just a case of like this company's got 1 or 2 exahash and it's valued that rate. There are some reasons why some of these smaller companies are valued where they are, because there's a challenge for them to grow much further. But DMG have sort of booked the trend. That's a nice increase once you get those machines online and get them energized and get them delivering. Get that Bitcoin mine back close to 50 with twice the hash rate.
No kidding. A significant fleet upgrade, and look forward to seeing that one come online in month here. Next up, you guys, we're going to be talking about TeraWulf. So let us know if you have any questions from the Wolf Pack here. Slide 23, I believe, Anthony. Now, a number of big announcements, most notably their early debt repayment. So this one caught us both by surprise. As you say, taking advantage of the ATM, the strength in share price, really maximizing shareholder value, I guess, by minimizing the amount of dilution, and then using those proceeds to completely extinguish the remaining $77 million of debt, which was honestly one of the big kind of overhangs or I guess drawbacks from the investment community on TeraWulf. What do you think of this one, Anthony?
This was a great update, and we weren't surprised. We were expecting an announcement on debt in July because they promised to pay a chunk, and we were probably expecting around about the 20 million to be taken off there. That would take the debt down to sort of 55, 56 million, and again another, and with them announcing probably at the end of the quarter maybe another payment there, but it looks like they've utilized their at the market offering there. They've got one in place, and the share price has done really well in the last sort of month or so. I think it's up 66% in the last month. So with the share price getting to that $5, it even reached $6, I think, beginning this week. That means if you can sell shares between $5 and $6, you're not giving away as much of the company as you would have been if you were selling the shares at, say, $2 or $1.50 it was a year ago. So they've waited for the right time to do this, and it's paid off. I actually dropped the company a note about, I think it was maybe a year ago when the share price reached $4, and I sent a note, to a bit of tongue in cheek to Patrick, saying, I hope you're utilizing the ATM while the share price is over $4 to help reduce that debt. And he actually responded to me and said, that's quite an astute observation. So obviously something they were thinking about. They didn't do that before then because they obviously being a low cost miner. I mean, they're mining at the Nautilus site at 2 cents a kilowatt hour, and they're sort of like their average power price for Lake Mariner and Nautilus is around about the 3.5 cents. So you're literally talking about one of the lowest cost miners. They will be making nice profits this year in terms of Bitcoin mining. So they were able to sort of like pay some of that money off. Now the benefit for this is obviously that every miner wants to effectively have a debt-free balance sheet. So you've got no interest payments. I think the interest payments for the first quarter this year were, I think it was about $3 million, between $2 and $3 million. So that's not going to happen going forward. So that's a nice saving from their costs going forward. And also, by being debt free now, it gives them the opportunity to do a lot more. The markets like the fact that they've done that. I mean, we've seen Bitfarms get rid of 160 million. We've seen now TeraWulf, I think their debt's come down from about 140 million. So that's a massive turnaround in a similar period to Bitfarms. So the market price hit about 1.8 billion this week. So this was phenomenal. I think the market really likes TeraWulf because that cheap energy, and they do things really well. They've got the contract at the Nautilus there, and they're looking to expand that by another 50 megawatts there. So we'll see how that goes. And obviously, there's with the AWS also operating at the Nautilus there. Paul's made it quite clear if they send a nice big check with Amazon written on the bottom of it, they might consider giving up there. But it'd have to be a big check for Paul to sort of to consider that. And unlike most other miners, it's TeraWulf's owned majority by the insiders. So you've got the likes of Paul and the likes of NASA, who are the co-founders of TeraWulf. They own a significant amount of that company. Paul obviously has got a great stake in the energy company that provides TeraWulf with its power at Lake Mariner. So they've got the Beowulf energy company there. So he's part of that company as well. So everything seems to be working right for Paul at the moment. And we've had him on the podcast a couple of times this year, and he certainly puts his points across in an animated way. So this was really positive news. I think any miner to get rid of the debt is certainly in the current climate is a great move.
Hey, Anthony, you talk about the Lake Mariner facility and Beowulf as the underlying power company there. Paul Prager, also the CEO of that one. Interestingly enough, news also broke, or at least came to light this week, about the Hopa Port Authority really looking at that location as a prime site, the Somerset site, for a short distance shipping sea corridor between the US and Canada. So that was a really cool development too. Not only are we seeing the likes of AWS interested in some of these facilities, we're also seeing just the actual real estate value of these locations as well coming to fruition.
It's a really good point. So we've seen a lot of talk about miners who have infrastructure that hasn't even been converted into facilities. And, one of those companies is IREN. They've got a 1.4 gigawatt site. I mean, it's probably a piece of land at the moment that will have access to 1.4 gigawatts to utilize for that site. Obviously, you have to get all the infrastructure in there. But the interesting fact is if IREN wanted to sell that piece of land, they'd get a massive premium what they paid for it, because those sort of pockets of land with power associated, those are the pieces of land that these big hyperscalers are looking for. So CoreWeave went to Core Scientific because Core Scientific had access. Core Scientific got access to 1,200 megawatts of power. So CoreWeave felt like they can go to one of the biggest miners and say, how about using some of that power to deliver HPC? We want to have an agreement with you to utilize it, and it was a great agreement. There's nothing to stop IREN doing something similar. I mean, they've got this 1.4 piece of this site with access to 1.4, and I think they said they've even got another potential pipeline of another 1 gigawatt. So there's a lot of money associated with the value of these. The valuations of these will be going up by the X in terms of, because they're sought after. That's the bottleneck. So people are saying to me in the comments I can see here, how much would 100 million, how long would it take, and all that like that. If you haven't got these big power transformers and the requirements to build substations, it's going to take about 12 months lead time to order those parts to get them available. The building of the facility, we know that the likes of Argo Blockchain built the Helios site in about 7 months. So from a piece of land that was probably it was flat land, it didn't need 75,000 trucks of dirt removing. Like the Corsicana site, but then again, it wasn't the same size as Corsicana. I mean, we're talking about a 200 megawatt facility, but they built that in 7 months. So that was an amazing, that gives you sort of an idea from start to finish. We're sort of seeing that now at the Childress site.
And Hut 8 did that too, Anthony. Hut 8 put up very quickly.
Hut 8 did something, but then we're talking about I think if you look at the quality of the facility compared to what what IREN have done there, it's slightly different. It would take a bit longer, but we've seen what IREN are doing at Childress site there. Them actual buildings look pretty much well put together. We've seen the close up of the photographs, but they're putting those 20 or 25 megawatt buildings, depending on what size miners they've got in there. They're going up quite quickly now, but they've got to get a lot of those buildings up and running by the end of the year. I mean, interestingly, 4 exahash of their growth between now and the end of the year. So they're at 10 at the moment, and they're going to 30 by the end of the year. But 4 of it will be a case of replacing inefficient miners with the most efficient miners. So you're from a sheer literally taking one miner out and putting the same size miner but a more efficient miner, that's going to increase their hash rate by 4. That's the difference with some of these new like S21 miners. That's the difference in efficiency. If you look at an S21, it's twice as efficient as the S19. And so that means you're putting the same size box in there, but you're getting twice the power and everything else that goes with it. So these facilities can handle, this effectively double the hash rate for the same power load. So, an S19 could be operating at, I don't know, say 3,500 watts per actual ASIC. And the S21 will be operating at a similar output, but you're getting twice the actual hash rate for it. So that's how efficient these machines are. You can replace machines, grow your hash rate without having to grow the physical facility.
Sure. Now, another great question here, Anthony, from District 9. Then we'll move along to another miner. Talking about hyperscalers, so Apple, Google, NVIDIA, they're far more advanced. They can offer more competitive pricing. They're not going to be able to compete in terms of scale with some of these hyperscalers. Now, 2 comments I've heard in the industry. Number one, from Sam Tabar, a lot of times there's going to be a conflict of interest with these hyperscalers. So if you're trying to design an LLM or a large language model, and you're wanting to host that on one of these servers, you may not want to do that with Google or Apple due to the fact that there's some concerns about your security of your property and development and things like that. Whether or not there's truth to that, I'm not sure, but that was one angle. The other angle was there's also going to be difference in terms of audience and who these companies are serving. So you may not have the budget or the duration of the contract or whatever the case is to secure a contract with a hyperscaler, but you may still need HPC AI compute in your day-to-day business. So Anthony, what would be your rebuttal to this question or comment here?
I mean, Sam's they're not using a hyperscaler for their business there. I honestly I don't really know. I mean, it's the end of the day, it's not the competition between these; it's the competition to find facilities and power. That's the challenge at the moment. And everyone. So these Bitcoin miners are looking for cheap renewable energy. At the same time, these hyperscalers are looking for the same sites. So, Jason's been on the podcast. You won't find any more 1 gigawatt sites out there. They've gone in the past. If you haven't got one already, they've gone in the past. And Corsicana, because we know it's already, the ground's broken. They've literally, they're a third into that site already. They're going to get, they're going to fully utilize that site over the next 2 years. They're growing that now. That's a done deal. So that is that will be the largest Bitcoin mining facility in the world. Yes, IREN's got a facility, but they have to order all the parts for it. They have to break ground. They have to deliver that site. At the moment, it's still on their list of they've still got a significant amount to do at Childress. So they're future planning, but it could be a long time in the future. And to look at the hyperscalers, look at the Bitcoin miners. It wouldn't surprise me if we see more and more miners start looking to utilize some of their power and facilities towards the HPC AI business. I think we'll see more and more of it. The conversation at the moment, the current conversation has changed towards HPC. Who knows how long it's going to last, but those margins that Core Scientific are achieving once that service is being delivered, in year 3, you're talking at the moment with 270 megawatts, nearly not far off $1 million a day, and they've still got 230 megawatts to issue out. They've still got capacity to give another 230 megawatts to either CoreWeave or another customer. And when they initially gave up the 200 megawatts to CoreWeave were one of 50 companies who were sort of interested in partnering with Core Scientific. Now, when they went through and looked at the levels of some of the size required, and they were able to sort of discount quite a few of those 50 potential clients, but they got it down to a sizable number who were still interested and met the criteria. So their criteria was you had to want more than 100 megawatts, and you had to be able to give the funding to pay for the capital requirement up front. And that's that sort of like, CoreWeave won that deal there, but there was still a lot of interest from other potential partners. So again, we were expecting another deal, and they announced the second deal with CoreWeave, and we'll be expecting another deal from Core Scientific this year to start utilizing some of the rest of it. And so they've allocated 500 megawatts. They're only at 270 at the moment. If they get that 500 megawatts at a similar value to the current deal, you're looking at a company that could be bringing in $1.5 million a day in profit. Let that just sink in for a second there. $1.5 million a day for a HPC contract. $1.5 million a day is close to $500 million a year in profit. If you start using price earnings ratio of say 15 or 20, which is not unusual for tech companies to use in terms of valuations, the valuation of the HPC business alone, forget the Bitcoin mining, and they've got 20 exahash of Bitcoin mining, and they're growing it, as we've already alluded to today with this deal with Block. Now they're looking for 15 exahash of miners coming through. Yes, some will be replacing the older miners, but they'll still look to grow the hash rate as well. So they're not stopping on the Bitcoin mining. But just take the HPC business at 500 million with a 20x price earnings ratio. That values the company at 10 billion in terms of HPC, just HPC. And today the company's valued at about 1.8. So you could say that the market is not really valuing that correctly. And we've just seen the announcement this week about the notes. So they had 260 million of notes that once the share price achieves $7.77 for a period of 20 days as an average over that price there, an average daily price of the share, they would be automatically switched to shares. And actually today, on the 10th of July, 45 million shares have converted those notes into ordinary shares. So that will add, again, close to 450 million to the market capitalization. So Core Scientific, by the end of today, will have a market cap of well over probably about 2.2 billion, which will put them probably just above IREN, and not far behind Riot Platforms. So it's a really good place to be at the moment for some of these miners who've decided to go down this route into the HPC. And with this big deal, I say to you now, this was probably the biggest news story we've seen this year. We've seen a lot of good news stories, but I think the Core Scientific CoreWeave deal was the biggest of the year. And every other news story, although it's good, is still having to try and compete with that news story, because that really opened everyone's eyes when that was announced. It was that was like game changing.
Yeah, and it didn't take Adam and team long to pivot from the strength of the HPC contract announcement to this new contract with Block and these 3 nanometer chips. 15 exahash is no small order.
He was asked by the is your focus going to be HPC? No, we're a Bitcoin miner. That's what we are. People forget, Core Scientific have mined the most Bitcoin of all the public miners since day one. They were the biggest total in 2021, 2022, and 2023, and Q1 2024. Now, the likelihood is this second quarter now, Marathon will overtake them for the first time in terms of a quarter, not the whole period. I think in the last 3 years, Core Scientific have mined something like 10,000, 12,000 coins more than Marathon Digital have. So they've still got a lot of catching up to do there. But no, they're focused on Bitcoin mining. They, like I say, this deal with Block to bring in these machines, which are operating at the same efficiency as the F21. So we're talking about 15 joules a terahash. And this is great news. But we've seen the other Bitdeer are also looking to bring in a miner at similar, if not greater, efficiencies than the block model. They talked about a 10 joules a terahash, which is achievable, and they've even given themselves a target to get down to 5 joules a terahash, which is like, if they can get to 5, or even if they can get to 10, then you're talking, if they get to 10, that's 3 times cheaper to mine a Bitcoin than an S19. You're then starting to, you can weather the hash price going really low if you can get the efficiency of these miners down to 10. And so that will be interesting to follow Bitdeer's journey to get to there. I mean, the first generation they've come out with was 18, and that was as good as Canaan's his best model. So Canaan, one of the big 3 providers of Bitcoin miners, and Bitdeer achieved that with their first generation. So the second generation I think is 14, third generation 10, and fourth generation sort of like towards the end of next year looking to get to 5. They firmly believe that 14 and 10 is achievable with what they know at the moment. And 5 is a little bit more aspirational, thinking out the box, but they still think that it's something that they can try and get down to. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I saw 15, I thought that was as far as it's going, because the XP, the news that came out when the XP came out, the XP is closer to 20, is it 19, 20? That people were saying the level then of technology improvement was leveling out. You can only take technology so far, and they thought the XP was as far as it would go, but actually they're going to far greater technology than that now.
Now, Anthony, I want to come on to Marathon and CleanSpark in a second here. We just talked about Core Scientific really going from strength to strength. You mentioned Bitdeer's technology roadmap. So I've flipped over to the Bitdeer slide here as well. They actually talk about deploying that first round of the SealMiner A1 ASIC chips in the 4th quarter of this year in the top highlights there. And then if you go down to the ASIC development portion of this press release, this is their June production release that came out on the 3rd of July. Excuse me. It talks about some of the subsequent steps for the development of the Seal 2 chips. As you mentioned, 14 joules per terahash in the 3rd quarter of this year, which we're now in, and initiating R&D of the 3rd generation chip with the 10 joule per terahash capacity. So this is a not too distant future reality for a lot of these miners and ASIC developers, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading that now, and that suggests to me that the ones that will be delivered in Q4 this year should be the Seal 2, the 14 joules, because they're going to be ready by October. In they're going to have the wafers expected delivered in Q3, which means possibly they could be ready for production in Q4 and delivered in Q4. So if they can get down to that 14 by then, that'll be sort of like the best of the market. But then Bitmain have already acknowledged they're going down to 12. So it's sort of like we've got a bit like an efficiency race at the moment in terms of where these companies are trying to get the most efficient miners out there. And we've just today Block announcing their machine there. You've got the likes of Marathon working with Auradine to deliver. I think Auradine had about 80 million of funding approved in the last funding round. So we've not yet to see a big model come out from them, but I'm sure they're the guys, the Palo Alto guys working on that project there will be delivering something. And it seems to be like the space race at the moment in terms of Bitcoin mining. So you've got like the likes of Elon Musk and Amazon and Virgin, trying to get the space race, and we've got the same now with a lot of these companies trying to deliver the most efficient miners. And it really is, they have to deliver this efficiency because the price to mine is just getting more and more costly. Every halving, that energy price doubles, and it takes you twice as much power to deliver the same one Bitcoin, and that's the issue. So it's going to be interesting seeing how these companies, it's all right saying it on these sort of updates here. You've got to deliver it. So Bitmain, who are out there as the sort of Bitmain's valuation, if you added up all the mining companies in North America and added their market capitalization together, it probably still wouldn't be the same value as Bitmain. That's how big Bitmain are. So, if you're going to take on the biggest and the best, you better make sure you've got the resources. The only thing with Bitdeer is Bitdeer were Bitmain. So, the co-founder of Bitmain is the CEO of Bitdeer. So, he's probably got some understanding of what's required, having been at Bitmain for a long period. And Bitdeer only came out about 2 or 3 years ago from that company there. And they've got an R&D. I've said this before on podcasts. The R&D number at Bitdeer is about 50 people working in R&D. That's more than some of these miners have got employees. I think Bit Digital have only got 15. Marathon have probably got about 60. And Bitdeer have got 50 just working in R&D. So you'd expect some secret sauce to be coming out of that factory in terms of hash rate delivery. So Bitdeer again need to look at this company in terms of what it does. It's not a self-mining company. Self-mining is a small part of the company, about 40%. It's got big hosting, big management services. It's going into HPC now. So it's already got a HPC model up and running in Singapore. It's going to expand on that. Bitdeer has got access to probably more power than all the other miners. So with these miners talk about pipelines of power. I think if you look at Bitdeer's latest update, that'll tell you it's got something like 2.5 gigawatts of power in the pipeline. They're building some big sites, and yes, they'll come available next year. Their plan this year is to probably get to about 11 or 12 exahash. But next year in 2025, they've got a target of over 40 by the end of the year. So that's going to be like literally nearly 4x in your current hash rate. So 2025 for them, and at the same time building their own machines to deliver it. So it's a win-win. They know that the biggest cost of producing an ASIC is the actual wafers from TSMC. So the Taiwanese semiconductor company, they produce the wafers. Bitdeer have got a great relationship with them, and they can put them in, they've done the groundwork. It's about 8% of the actual ASIC is all in the cost of these wafers. And if you're building them yourself, you're taking out overhead and profit, some of the overhead and profit that apply to that other companies are putting into it, and you get yourself a cheaper miner. Because again, energy is a big cost, but obviously the capital expenditure to buy these miners, even though these miners are at a cheap rate at the moment, it doesn't always work that way. In 2021, some of these companies we're talking about today were spending 4 or 5 times more on producing a miner that's probably half as efficient as the one today. So let that one sink in a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting positioning going into the anticipated bull run, where we saw those prices for mining rigs really go through the roof. So Bitdeer will be in a great position if that repeats this cycle, not to mention the efficiency metrics here we just discussed. Now, you talk about Bitdeer's R&D team as 50 FTE or headcount, Anthony. Then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got Griffin. They've actually got only 3 employees at the company. This is another smaller miner that we cover, but a lot of experience on the team here. I'll zoom in for this one, you guys, so you can see this is from their June production results. Essentially, it's a Q2 operational update, but you can tease the June numbers out of there. And one specific point that's highlighted here, Anthony, talking about the M&A opportunity. So in discussion with over 20 different companies in regards to M&A or potential synergistic opportunities for the team here at Griffin. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we had Rob on the podcast just over a month ago, and he was saying that his phone was receiving a lot of calls, and there will be we're talking about these efficient companies that we're discussing today. Those are the ones that can manage to mine Bitcoin at the current hash price. A lot of the non-public companies, the smaller organizations, going to really struggle, and then it's what do they do? So Griffin are looking to sort of maybe acquire some of these companies at really good value, and to grow their company that way. Now they when we pressed him for a sort of target by the end of the year, I mean, he came out with 10, but at the same time he said, look, it's a target. We'd be happy if we got to 6. I mean, they're at just under 1 exahash at the moment. So that's going to be a challenge, even if you can get some of these deals together. And we said before, it looks like some of these smaller miners, even the North American miners, would probably benefit by merging with each other to sort of to grow quicker together than it would be on their own. But the one thing that Griffin are able to do that other miners are is, and I suppose it's like Bitdigital as well. You haven't got a lot of overheads. We've only got 3 people working there. You're sort of saving on facility. You're saving on office space. You're saving on employees. A lot of these overheads on top of the energy cost to mine. So they'll have an energy cost to pay and a hosting fee, and then the rest is down to some of their G&A costs, which should be really low in terms of percentage compared to other miners. Now, because they don't own facilities, they're having to pay a hosting fee, and it's not when the Bitcoin price drops, even the hosting fee, even it's like it's maybe 1 or 2 cents. I think last time we looked at Marathon Digital and Bit Digital, I think they were paying something like 6.5, just over 6.5 cents for a hosted service. And Marathon still have most of their machines hosted. Even though they're buying up facilities, they're still operating from a hosting perspective more than they're operating from their own infrastructure. So they're still paying that fee, although they've now realised it's better to have your own facilities and to reduce that cost. Bit Digital, again, they're hosted in all their facilities are hosted, so they're paying a hosting fee. But again, they keep their costs down, and they make sure there's a margin on everything they do. So Sam's quite unusual. He's got a finance and a legal background. So, there's nothing going to get past Sam to bar. And Rob's also, is a CEO, but Rob was the CFO at Riot Platforms. So, every one of Rob's team, all 3 of them have got experience in the mining industry. So he's got 3, heavy hitters. I think one of them was at Marathon Digital. He was at Riot Platforms. So you come back with those experiences there, and they've delivered a company, it's probably worth around, $60-70 million now. But you just want to see how it's going to grow. So, if you're getting that many calls and quite a few of them look like optimistic, we'll hopefully see some more news updates and get Rob on the channel and get him to talk about, what's happening once they announce. We're not here to sort of get all the secrets in advance. We don't operate that way. But, as and when these companies do deliver, and we were very grateful to Bitfarms to allow us to interview Ben on the day he was appointed. So likewise, we want to speak to Rob and Griffin Mining when they announce something, so we can get that message out to everybody there, because we're using our platform to highlight Griffin. And so we want to make sure that, the people that are interested in Griffin, there's not many other analysts out there, I think, covering them at the moment, even in social media world. I think Sebastian's not doing as many of the small miners anymore. I think he cut about 6 or 7 of them away a few months ago. He's focusing on the sort of the bigger ones now. And we've talked about this gap forming in terms of the miners. And if you look at that market capitalization page, what you had up originally there, look at that there. Look at the gap. Once you get past Bitfarms at 1 billion and drop down to Bit Digital and Hive, you're into sort of 400 million. There's a 600 million cap there. And then once you get past Hive, you've got the likes of DMG, and actually DMG's 83 million there. That is in Canadian. So really, if you put that into dollars, that's about $12.30 or something like that in terms of changing Canadian money over. So
now, it's interesting. Now, 2 interesting other stories that are just developing here, Anthony, in the comments. It looks like there's some major power outages in Texas, which brings up a great question. With so many of the miners now concentrated in this one state, what would happen if there was a big natural disaster, a fire, a tornado, hurricane, whatever the case is? I know there's obviously some sort of insurance for these companies, but that would be having a major, major impact on this industry. The other one that's right hot off the press, you guys, Anthony and I are speaking at the Bitcoin Nashville event, which we just talked about. I just got an email, Anthony, saying they've had to shuffle around a lot of these speaking events because of a major speaker to be announced. So I'm going on record betting that's going to be Donald Trump coming to the Bitcoin Nashville conference as my hypothesis, but we'll see how that one plays out. If you guys have any more information about this Texas power outage, let me know here, Tej, in the comments. I'm not sure if that's an isolated incident or something more going on there. Anthony, moving along here, next up, we wanted to get into
sorry, just while you've got that chart there. So yeah, so that box that you've highlighted there, the gap from Hive is then another 300 million below them. So you know we were talking about, we had about 6 or 7 miners in the mid tier, and the mid tier previously was about 300 to 500 million. So all those miners that were previously mid tier, like Bitfarms, like Hut, like Bitdeer, like Wolf, like IREN, they've all climbed into sort of like, effectively now the top tier. So it's interesting times. But those 5 at the bottom there, how do they grow? How do they grow to get into that mid tier and aspire to get into the top tier? And actually, if you look at IREN where it is at the moment, even though IREN share price is come off at late, it was up over $15 at the start of the week. Even at $13.26 now, it's still looking. It might flip Riot quite soon. And we know Cause today. Cause is going to benefit from another probably close to 450 million on top of their market capitalization. So that will take them to about 2.2 billion. And that's wiped off 260 million debt. All that Cause have to wait for now is the shareholders to process the Cause W warrant and get their share. I think it's for $6.93 or something like this, just under $7. And the share price at the moment is well over $9, so you're able to buy a share a lot cheaper than what it is on the market. But the proceeds of by activating that warrant go back into the company to clear the debt and give the company about a $400 million runway of funds then to start growing the company, and all their sort of caveats about having to sell Bitcoin within 10 days reduction go away. So a lot of changes could be happening for Core Scientific once those Cause W warrants are activated. They've still got another 2.5 years before they have to be physically activated. So I think it's 31st of December 2026. Adam's articulated why he thinks shareholders should do this sooner rather than later. I'm not classing myself as any sort of an expert on understanding the valuation of warrants. All I know is the warrants are good value at the moment by holding the warrants as well. So I haven't sold my warrants. I did think about, I think about a week ago when it reached 525, I thought about selling the warrants and then just buying shares with the proceeds I got as another way of doing this, because it was attractive. So you're selling your warrant $5.25, I think it was. That's $5.25, and then using that proceeds to buy the ordinary shares if you're still interested in Core Scientific that way, rather than paying $6.90 for the actual share. So it was just another way of shareholders can look at it. But there will be plenty of people wanting to buy those warrants. Believe you me, they've got a value, and so institutions will probably snap those up. If people are going to sell them, so there's no shortage of buyers for those warrants. But it'd be interesting to see what happens. When they're fully debt free and they're then able to compete. Actually, if you look at the runway we just discussed about HPC, it wouldn't surprise me in the next 12 months to see Core Scientific become the most valuable miner in terms of that HPC contract. It really wouldn't. I think once we start seeing, they have to deliver for CoreWeave. We have to see that, start delivering it, start getting the revenues in. So I don't want the company to run before they can walk. So they've got 6 months now of getting ready to start delivering that service, but they need to deliver the service, and those big amounts of revenues they're going to make good profits in the first 2 years when they're paying back the 405 million capital that's been utilised to build these facilities. So CoreWeave are injecting 405 million in advance to Core Scientific to say, build us these facilities for 270 megawatts of HPC power.
Yeah.
And, you know, that gets paid back over literally the first 2 years, 2 years and a fraction of the third year. And, you know, sort of by year 3, you're into 80% profits on delivery. Core Scientific don't have to worry about the power. It's not them. The contract is with CoreWeave and the power provider.
Yeah,
they
it's
don't
really
worry about downtime, curtailment. It's not interested as long as they provide the facilities and they'll have their staff there. You know, and CoreWeave staff will also be in the facility there, so they'll be monitoring, make sure that GPUs are operating in the same way that these miners. We've been to these sites now, so we can see from their software how they can articulate there's a certain miner not operating or functioning, you know, optimally. They can go and replace that miner, repair it, put it back there. You know, Core Scientific, I think in the first quarter this year, did something like 11,000 repairs to their mining fleet. And when we got there on June the 12th, I think it was, they'd already done about 10, 11,000 in the second quarter, and they weren't quite at the end of the quarter. So in-house, they'd done like over 20,000 repairs to mining rigs in the first 6 months of the year. And that was like the Denton facility there, 150 megawatt facility. So, you know, they've got a team there. We met the team. We spoke to the team. We were shown the types of repairs that they're doing. It could be like replacing fans, could be replacing boards. They do outsource a little bit. Some of the maybe more technical stuff, they outsource it. They've got a quick turnaround contract in place there. So you don't want machines going away for 6 months, because every day you're not mining, it's revenues that are lost. And we've seen some of the big miners who've not always been focused on getting mining machines up and running as quick as we'd like. So, but yeah, moving on.
No, interesting analysis there, and I could see Core's overtaking top spot on this list as well, Anthony. As you say, even using those traditional PE metrics for tech companies in the 15-20 range, you're looking at $5-10 billion market cap just on the HPC component of that company alone, if that's where the market starts to value these hybrid mining companies. Now, another interesting tale this week is CleanSpark, Anthony. So share price for the pure play miners has definitely fallen off a little bit. Oh, sorry here, guys. CleanSpark's 12. Share price for the pure play miners has fallen off, Anthony. We saw CleanSpark trading hands, I think, as high as $23 a few months back. This is a 1 month chart, so you can see they topped out just north of $20 a share. Pulled back now about $5 per share in the last month, or about $8 from the highs we saw earlier this year. A big concern for Riot, CleanSpark, and Marathon is the pure play focus on Bitcoin. Obviously, there's a spot for this in the market. Some people want exposure only to the Bitcoin miners. I've actually seen a few comments today saying pure play only. However, it's presenting limited opportunities for management. And Matt Schultz, who's the chairman of the company, went on social media basically saying, hey, we're sticking to our guns here. Very similar to what we heard from Jason Lass. We see Bitcoin as the real value here in terms of scarcity and overall value of the commodity. We want to stick to our plan, and we want to be a pure play miner. So I wanted to get your take on that. And as a secondary question, Anthony, do you think that may limit potential M&A opportunities for companies like CleanSpark or Riot, as they maybe don't want to touch anything HPC related?
I think let's be clear, and I mean, Matthew's come out and said, you know, they're a pure play, and they've not even ventured into that space. But who knows what the future brings? I mean, Bitfarms are very much a pure play miner until about 2 weeks ago, when they announced this purchase of a site in Pennsylvania to deliver 120 megawatts, of which some of that could be utilized for HPC. So, you know, like Ben said, the current conversation is about HPC, irrespective of which miner you are. So CleanSpark share price did reach towards the end of March $23 just before Easter, and then we've seen it come down to $15 now. The last 3 months it's been absolutely flat, hasn't risen in terms of, you know, it's up, it's actually about 0% increase in the last 3 months. I've just checked the chart now, so not delivering anything over that period there. But you know, Matthews, if the Bitcoin price gets to 200,000 or 250,000, then the conversation we're having now is irrelevant, because the Bitcoin, you know, will be delivering great margins. My concern for Bitcoin mining is if the price gets to say gets to like 100,000, 150,000, how many more machines go back onto the network that were sort of like mining inefficiently at 60,000? So what happens to the difficulty as the Bitcoin price hits 100,000, hits 150,000, hits 200,000, all these targets that people are coming out with, this is where it's going to reach in the next year or the next 10 years. If it reaches 150, 200,000, how many more machines go back onto the market and everyone's trying to get a little bit of profit? What's the impact to the likes of CleanSpark, Marathon and Riot? Because they're effectively going to be mining less Bitcoin. Yes, the Bitcoin price is high, but the production will be affected, because as we saw the Bitcoin price get to $70,000, we saw the difficulty continually increasing, and you know, with that many machines on the network, they were actually achieving the blocks in greater time than 10 minutes. So 10 minutes is the normal time for a block to be processed. And, you know, whereas the Bitcoin price is rising with more machines on the network, they were doing it in sort of like 9 minutes. So the difficulty then has to kick in to make it harder to get the time back to 10 minutes. And we saw in the last difficulty, before it was changed, it was taking closer to 11 minutes. So we knew machines were coming off the global network. And the global network at the moment, I think it was just under 600, but it had reached about 800 in terms of 800 exahash. So when you look at the likes of Marathon with you know, with 30, you're looking at probably about you know, 30x. Probably looking at Marathon having between 4 and 5% of the global network as it was then. But if it's down to say 600, they've got like over 5% of the network. So you know, having that percentage of the network, if there's less miners on, is great. As the Bitcoin price goes up, your percentage of the network drops because there's more people. You know, it's like more people are buying lottery tickets. You know, the chances of winning is reduced. And so, you know, that's the one side that, you know, I need to sort of like, you know, understand probably a bit more, is what impact will it make? Does the growth in Bitcoin price offset the reduced production because there's more people mining when the Bitcoin price rises? That's the sort of like the calculation that people need to understand. And maybe I'll just do some analysis on that and see what the numbers look like. It won't take me too long to do it, but it's not something I've focused on. But these questions keep coming up. What if it got to 100,000? What if it got to 150,000? You know, everyone will be trying to get those old S17s, S19 miners back on the system there. Even Adam Sullivan at Core Scientific has said they were doing really well, even like a month ago, using some of the older miners and just changing the settings to maybe under sort of like perform them, and they were getting really good profits from some of these older miners. So when the price rises, some of these companies can activate some of their old machines, and it means the global hash rate increases, and then, you know, production is effective for everybody. Then it starts reducing. And bear in mind, you know, look at what miners go to Marathon's update and see what they mined last year with half the hash rate, what they mined this year with twice as much hash rate. I think they're only mining half the amount of Bitcoin with twice the hash rate. So there's a massive difference in, you know, difficulty impacts production significantly. And yes, price has got a price. There is a price comparison, because the price of Bitcoin now compared to a year ago, we're in different ball games there. But has the level of difficulty and the price, are people getting the same sort of revenues? If you tie that up, that's probably a very quick calculation to work out. But that'd be interesting to determine.
It most definitely would. Now we've got a number of other big names to cover here still today, you guys. IREN, Marathon. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time on Soluna, Anthony. This is one that we've talked about a number of times on the channel. Slide 22, I believe. I'll pull this one up. This one, 2 key updates in their monthly results here. I know it's a little bit small, so I'll zoom in for you guys. Number one, we got their production update. They broke out various different revenue streams. So they talk about their generative AI, their Soluna cloud division, and that reduction in the convertible note loan, which we talked about in our podcast, Anthony. But then I think most importantly, or maybe more importantly, they give a specific and detailed update on each one of their projects, the different phases, the number of megawatts assigned to each project, and what it's basically going to be servicing. So wanted to get your take on Soluna. I know you've been a fan of this one for a while, and see if you feel like they're really now hit that inflection point in terms of getting these projects off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, John's been in charge about just over a year now. So we've had him on the podcast 3 or 4 times this year. He's always able to really articulate how the company's operating. I like the way they do these small project packages, 25, 50 megawatts. They've got access to a lot of power potentially if they can deliver some of the projects. But, the one thing that, as a small miner, they just don't have the capital in-house to deliver these. So they're required to look for partners who've got the capital. So in the same way that Core Scientific have got a partner like CoreWeave who can give them 400 million to grow and produce these facilities for HPC, Soluna also look for those partners to deliver the capital cost up front. Soluna then work the project, get it built. So it could be a mining project, it could be a HPC project. And then there's some sort of like, a profit share of the revenues going forward there. So, and what I like about Soluna is the quality of their build looks really, really smart. When you've seen the photographs of some of the sites, I thought they were I thought it was AI in terms of they were being produced by artificial intelligence, but actually they're the real sites. They look like renders, but they were really, really, it looks like really, really well put together. So Project Dorothy 2 is about to mobilize now, and there'll be. I think they've actually built into their go to their presentations, have a look through the presentation, Soluna. It's got all the costs and revenues for all their projects in there, how they're going to deliver over the next couple of years, and it gives you them in two price points. It gives you them a price point of about if the hash price is $45 or if the hash price is $65. Well, today it's about $48. So you can look at the $45 model in their presentation and just see what the revenues are. You'd be quite surprised for a company that in Canadian terms, I think you had them at 24 million. So that's under 20 million US dollars as a valuation market capitalization there. I think they're going to achieve something like 38, 40 million revenues in 2024 alone. And that goes up significantly in 2025 as more projects come online. So Project Dorothy 2 has got approval. Project Catty in Texas with 166 megawatts. That's probably one of their biggest projects. That's going to, that's still waiting for, some ERCOT approvals, and then that will be going, so I think some negotiations for land or whatever, but then that will be put in a project there to deliver that one there. So I quite like these, 4 or 5 niche projects that are putting together. They are looking at the HPC as well. So they've already allocated, I think, 3 megawatts to that there. And 3 megawatts doesn't sound a lot, but HPC uses about 1/10 of the power that Bitcoin mining does. So, if you look at Bitdigital won't be using that much more than 3 megawatts at the moment to deliver their 50 million annualized revenue. So 3 megawatts is a significant amount. I think TeraWulf initially allocated 2 megawatts to their HPC, and then they're going to increase that now. But smaller. It might sound small amounts, but these HPC contracts can be right punchy. I mean, just think what 270 megawatts that Core Scientific are providing for CoreWeave. That's it's an enormous amount. Core Scientific already provide HPC for CoreWeave. That I think they already allocate 16 megawatts at one of their sites anyway. So they have been delivering this type of a project already. But I like said that, you know, Soluna, as I say, they're a small company there. I've got a couple of questions with the company. I want some answers back before I decide to increase my holding. I've got some shares in my pension for Soluna, and the share price over the last month has performed better than all the other share prices. So Soluna's had the highest rise in the last month itself, over 100% up in terms of price. And you know, John's doing it. He's doing a good job there. I like the way they go about doing it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Anthony. I think a really unique business model. Now, talking about HPC, IREN is another contender I wanted to talk about today. They've also, you speak about Soluna releasing renderings of their site. IREN's put out a couple of recent photos of their Childress location. I think we counted 7 or 8 buildings going up now, Anthony. So really starting to see some great developments at the IREN location as well. Woodstock asked a question, given the 18-month lead time on a lot of these procured parts for the electricity, the substation, for the new location you mentioned in the intro, I think a 1.4 gigawatt location, you're thinking the earliest that could be coming online would be like 2026 then, or what?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, once you break ground, once the shovels go in, you're looking 18 months plus from there. So October 2022, Jason and the directors broke ground at Corsicana. They purchased the site, I think it was in April. So it went through over 2 years ago, the purchase of the site. And then they broke ground, so they got the shovels out and moved the first bit of earth in October, and since then, like 75,000 trucks of earth have been moved. So you know, I'm not saying IRENs will be as extensive as that amount of preparing the land, but it doesn't matter. Once, you know, the lead time for these parts, I would imagine they should be sourcing the power parts for that site now to come in sort of like the next 12 to 18 months. So then they can break ground maybe towards the end of next year and get it ready then in 26. But I think at least from where we are today, at least 2 years from delivering, start delivering revenues from that site. And bear in mind, if they're occupying, I think 260 megawatts at Childress. It's a 300 megawatt site, and so they'll still have a lot of capacity at Childress once they've got to 30 exahash. It's not taking all the capacity up there, so they'll still have to focus on that. But yeah, these miners don't want to stop at 30. They probably have a target of 50 or higher than that for next year or the year after. I think early target next year is 40, so that might be close to utilizing Childress. But yeah, you're going to be looking from once they break ground, you're looking at probably 18 months to sort of think about how long Childress has been around for, and it's only delivering now about 120 megawatts.
Okay, so that being said then, Anthony, IREN has seen tremendous share price growth. You and I were talking about this over the last few months, to a point now where they're actually one of the highest valued companies per exahash in terms of current exahash. When you talk about their fully funded growth plans for this year, up to 30 exahash, they've got plans to further increase that next year. Then you start to get into more realistic valuations. But this one has grown substantially. Do you think?
Share price was $4 in April. Yeah, share price was $4 in April. So we're now in July, and it's $13 plus today. It was as high as $15. So in a couple of months, if people have bought some shares in April when it dropped really down to $4, be sitting on a really good amount of profit having bought at that period. If you'd have bought beginning of last year when it was like literally just above $1, you're into sort of like 1,300-1,400% increase in your value. But again, when those prices were down at $1 there, the Bitcoin price was down at sort of like $15,000 for a Bitcoin. So how many people were venturing into the miners when the Bitcoin price was just dropping constantly day after day? It takes a lot of nerves to go in and think you've bottomed the market out there. But IREN have brought some really good updates out this year. The first big update was the announcement that we're going to 30 exahash. That changed. That was the game changer for them, because that then put them in the same position as CleanSpark and Riot and Marathon, and also they're going full focus on the on their HPC. They're looking to grow that. So they've got a client at the moment, and they're looking to try and poolside the client, and they're trying to grow that business there. They can see the opportunities. They've got the power to utilize in HPC, and yeah, it looks like it's the potential to grow well, and as I say, you know, imminently about to get past Riot. And bear in mind, go back over 12 months ago, and IREN was sort of like 12th or 13th in terms of market capitalization, these miners, and now they're looking to be like, you know, number 3 behind Marathon and CleanSpark.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Riot, Marathon. We want to get to them in a second here. We've also got HUD 8, which is a very exciting story right now. Before we do though, SATO Technologies, Anthony, wanted to get your take on this one. Another smaller miner that we cover just came out with their production results for the month of June here. You can see kind of the 3-month spread or Q2 spread on the screen. I'll pull it up for you guys. What are your thoughts on SATO right now?
So SATO, you know, in terms of hash rate, they are the smallest miner that we actually cover at the moment. So when they've got all their hash rate working, it's just over half an exahash. In June, they had at the beginning of June, they had a problem. They had a problem with their facility. I think there was a fire, and it affected, in their update, I think they said it was about 10%. But actually, if you look at the average operating hash rate, it was probably closer to maybe 20% of their hash rate as wasn't utilized during the month of June. So that's affected obviously their revenues, the amount of Bitcoin they've produced. And so there is an impact on there, but they do everything really well. I think well, in the year to date, they're actually coming in second behind Bitfarms. So them and Hive are pretty much on a par. Hive might have gone past them this month. Hive had a really good month in June, so Hive might take in the second place, but they're certainly in that top 3 at the moment in terms of production by per exahash. But again, it's a small miner. For me, it's where is the growth coming from? So we want to see growth, because you know, April, May, June, no change in the installed hash rate. And you know, you go to some of the other miners, they're growing 1, 2, 3, 4 exahash a month at the moment. So you know, Riot installed something like 7 exahash in the month of June. And you know, SATO's not been able to grow. I mean, I don't think for a year their hash rate's changed significantly, but what they do is they do well on a small amount. So you know, something, again, I think you've been looking at their share price, Bryce, and it's been doing reasonably well over the last month.
Yeah, it definitely has. There's been some bigger moves or swings in the SATO share price. It trades on the venture here in Canada, not the same volume as some of the others, but you can see, you guys, the significant decline in Bitcoin production from April 23, May 13, June 11. Obviously, the halving was in there, but then that operational issue you just mentioned, Anthony. So this is one to watch for sure, you guys. Very small market cap compared to a lot of the companies we cover on the channel. But like you said, Anthony, very good operator for what they have, and definitely starting to look interesting from a valuation perspective. Now, HUD 8 is another one in terms of interesting. A lot of storylines here this month with HUD 8. We had Sue and Asher on not too long ago. We're looking forward to seeing them in Nashville as well. Share price here, you guys. If you look at HUD 8 over the last few months, this is a 1-month view, but they were in the $6.80 range here not too long ago. They were up close to $18 here this week, and they just came out with another big announcement, definitive agreement for converting on just north of 200 megawatts, 205 megawatts within their pipeline. So Anthony, you talk about the pipeline story here we're hearing in the media. This is a great example of turning that from a lead into a project, hey?
Yeah, this is something that they've been really good at doing. The merger has worked well for for HUT and for USBT Corp for different reasons. I mean, HUT had the balance sheet with the 9,000 Bitcoin. That's obviously going to appeal to anybody who wants to join. That's you're talking like $600 million in terms of treasury. But what USBTC had is they had access to the US markets, they had access to big sites. They bought some big sites at real knockdown prices. And now we talk about all these sites and power is where the value is. So we've seen the HUT price, rise from just over $6 in January to, I think it was $16-17 early this week. So it nearly gone up 300%, and it still needs to go further. I think some shareholders probably from back in 2021 will be still scratching their heads. HUT 8 on its own back in 2021 was a $2.5 billion company at part of that year. And one of the biggest miners with the likes of Hive Digital before Marathon and Riot really came into the scene. Those were the original miners with Bitfarms. So we're starting to see this increase now. We've had Asher on the podcast this year with Sue, and he's talked about judge me in Q3. Well, the share price is really helping because I think it's doubled since he took over as CEO. So that's the one tick in the box. This is a really good announcement because again, it's irrespective of what they do there, it's having the ability to utilize a big 200 megawatt facility and have the power to go with it, and that's something that's in real need at the moment. So and it's immediately available, so it's not like there's be a lot of planning or work. This is something probably along the likes of CleanSpark would have been looking at to try and get their capacity to where they need to be. But HUT have got well over a gigawatt of power, which puts them into that sort of like top 3 or 4 mining companies in terms of power capacity and infrastructure. There's not many that get above HUT at the moment.
Yeah. Now, I know we've got a big match coming up. England plays today, Anthony, so we're on a tight timeline here, you guys. We wanted to get to Riot, though. We'll end out with a bang here. Slide number 20. Talking about a better bitfarms.com, Anthony, this was really the storyline from Riot this week. Interestingly enough, this press release came out within minutes of Ben's CEO announcement. So ironically or coincidentally, interesting timing there, but they're launching basically the next step of this takeover saga with Riot. They're now holding just shy of 15% of the company. They've launched a website. They basically talk about where they feel like there may be some flaws with Bitfarms currently. They also put forward 3 independent directors in terms of nominees for the board. What's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier in the podcast, it's not the company itself that they're dissatisfied with. It's just the directors that were in place. One of those directors was removed by the shareholders at the last AGM. One of the co-founders was removed, so they were down to 4 directors. They've just appointed Fanny Phillip, who was previously the chief operating officer at SATO Technology. So she's now a director, brings in some of that financial governance to the organisation. She's a CPA like myself, so she'll bring in that benefit to some of the committees there on there. But Riot had to, they've been in talks for 15, 16 months with Bitfarms. I think from their perspective, the board weren't giving them any real, understanding of what they felt was the price. I mean, they made an offer of this $2.30, which at the time when they did it was a premium of about 30% of what the average price had been in the 3 months before. So, it wasn't that long ago. Bitfarms price was like, hovering under $1, and they were in the territory where you get a period to get above $1 from the SEC, or you get delisted from the Nasdaq. So, so at $2.30. I know the shareholders themselves were saying that's not enough, and I was in agreement. I thought that, if you look at some of these other miners, how they value their exahash, and even Riot's exahash, we know it's over $100 per exahash there. They were offering about $100 million for each of the exahash of Bitfarms. So, but I think from Riot's perspective, there was no counter offer. There was no saying, well, that's too cheap, coming up with a higher price, or just weren't acknowledging it. They wanted them to stand still for 3 years. And that was too long for Riot, and especially in this industry. You don't know what's happening next week, never mind 3 years' time. So they put out a website. They've highlighted all things that they think the board have struggled to deal with over the last, couple of years, and they're hoping that it's that the shareholders themselves acknowledge this. Now, I'd say at the moment, the shareholders are probably would probably side with Bitfarms at the moment. I think many were in agreement about Ben taking over as CEO. That announcement's happened obviously since since Riot have started discussing. We've had a CEO removed. We've had a board member removed. We've had Bitfarms, struggle to get some of the hash rate that they were promising, although they are getting closer to delivering what they said they're doing now. But all these things were sort of like stacking up during that period of discussions with Riot that we weren't aware of. And so, Riot has said, look, enough's enough. We want to put 3 independent directors in. They even came up with suggestions for directors who are independent from both companies. And that's not been, taken with any sort of like interest, and therefore they put this site on there for shareholders to look at to see if there's if they feel. Now, from my perspective, if Bitfarms can get to 21 exahash by the end of the year and start using that HPC at the Pennsylvania facility, that could be a win-win for them. If the shareholders decide that Riot is the best option and they become the biggest mining company in the world, because Riot are one of the biggest at the moment, and you go and buy another company from a hash rate perspective, they will be the biggest, and then the market will value the synergistic. Look at those two companies. I mean, Bitfarms have got no debt on the balance sheet, and Riot have probably got the strongest balance sheet of all the miners. I mean, they've got well over, probably cash and Bitcoin well over $1 billion, just like Marathon have, but they've got 0 debt. Marathon have got 300 or 400 million of debt on their balance sheet. So. And they've got they own Corsicana, they own Rockdale, so they own all their facilities. Marathon don't own all their facilities, so they have to buy a significant amount of facilities to deliver this. But it'll be interesting how this plays out. It looks like Riot aren't going away, and if Riot do start selling any of the shares, then the market will have to be informed, I think, within 2 days of any sales of the shares, because they are a significant owner of shares in the company. So, even with the size of holding that Riot have, the amount of share volume that Bitfarms has had over the last few months, it's been quite high. It's been over 20 million some days. And so it's quite difficult to, like with these companies using ATMs, or if a big shareholder wanted to sell shares, it gets lost in the sort of like in the volume, because there's so much volume there that, you'd have to sell, 20 million just to sort of like get it to get someone to acknowledge there's a big sale going through. But we'll see how this one pays out. It's going to be with the appointment of Ben and the fact they've just bought this site in Pennsylvania. It shows that Bitfarms are making decisions to look forward, not look back. So that, and if Riot do end up getting Bitfarms, they'll have to pay a higher premium than what they're offering at the moment, because the valuation's already gone up to over $1 billion for Bitfarms as it is at the moment, and that will only rise if they can start energizing some of that hash rate that they've just installed.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, Anthony. And like I say, you guys, we'll continue to follow this story. We're more than happy to have members from either company on to talk about it as things develop. Now, Anthony, another big story we're following here. We've got England and Netherlands playing today. You're taking England. I'm going to be betting on Netherlands. So let us know, you guys, your thoughts here. We'll let you go, Anthony, to your soccer football event. We appreciate your time today, your insight as always. We'll see you guys tomorrow for a regular podcast. If you're still watching, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit 45,000 subscribers before we head down to Nashville. We're getting very close. And as always, leave a comment or question if we didn't get to it today. We'll answer in the next meeting. Anthony, thanks so much. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you guys soon.